was my mentor at Long Beach Memorial Hospital, as well as a coworker. She was a dear friend, and she was the uplifter of my soul. And I'm here to tell you Bethany lived a really good and blessed life. And I know some of you may question that and say, how can that be? Especially when you think about all the struggles she's had over the last couple of years, and even some suffering. But to me, a good life is not based on the absence of struggles or hardships. A good life is one in which, despite those struggles, despite those hardships, you've been able to love others greatly and to live in the knowledge that you are greatly loved. And that is so true of Bethany. Bethany loved every single one of us here today, as well as those who couldn't be here today. She was especially fond of you, Bill. And Bethany loved God. And Bethany lived in the knowledge and worked through her journey in life, knowing that she was loved by others, especially you, Bill. And most importantly, she knew she was loved by God. And she knows that love even stronger today. So we're here to celebrate her life. We look forward to, later on this afternoon, sharing our Bethany stories. And again, on behalf of Bill and the Koenig and Borges families, I thank you so much for coming. Your presence means so much to them. And now Pastor Mark Roberts is going to open with prayer.
I don't think I've ever read a prayer before at this point, but I chose a prayer to read and to pray because I see Bethany as one who really embodies this. And it's probably familiar to some of you, but I would encourage you to pray it with me and pray it for each other. It's called the Serenity Prayer. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's written by a man named Reinhold Niebuhr. And would you just pray with me as I read this, please? It says, "Dear Lord, please grant me the peace to accept what I cannot change in this world and the courage to change what I can. Please grant me the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the path to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you in the next life." And we ask this in Jesus' name.
Wherever and whatever venue you knew her, whether it was from the hospital world or the church world or the Pasadena world or the Michigan world, those words kept coming out. And secondly, it was interesting to me because when I would call, it wasn't like people had a hard time to know what to say. If you've ever taken a bag of potato chips from sea level up to Yosemite, and you know if you start to open them, they're all pressurized, and if you're not careful, they go boosh, and you have chips everywhere. That's kind of like what it was when I talked to you. Everybody just went boosh, and I had words all over the place. People wanted to say their thoughts and their feelings about Bethany because she impacted people in such a powerful way. And so it was a real privilege for me to get to hear that and scribble things down and try and come up with words that would convey things about her life and that would be helpful and meaningful. And so I started in Michigan, and of course I never knew Bethany in Michigan, but I do think a lot of who she was formed in those years. And Colette, forgive me if I expand on some of what we talked about, but I came up with 5 words from Michigan that I think were pretty important. And the first one probably was, she was a farm girl who was on a working farm. And that meant she had a work ethic with a capital W. She knew how to do that. She was pulling out rocks from the field before it was plowed. She was up early in the morning before school to make sure the calves got fed. She had the life of a farm girl for a long time. And that work ethic continued with her through her life. And I would never say that Bethany was a proud person, Pride was not an issue for her, but she was proud of her work ethic. She knew it was there, and she clung to that with a sense of accomplishment and achievement, and she knew that she could work hard and get a job done. Bethany loved nature, and whether it was the animals on the farm, or whether it was the dog or the barn cats, at an early age, if you watched her, you knew she was connected with nature in a pretty profound way. Colette told me about going down to the pond and she got bit by a muskrat, and I'm sure she was trying to befriend this little thing, because that's what Bethany would do. She loved animals, she loved nature, and Michigan offered her an opportunity to explore that and enjoy that. I was shocked to find out that my friend Bethany played the flute. I don't know how many of you knew she was a flute player. She was the first chair flute player in high school. And she was in the marching band playing the flute, touring around the state in high school. She also played the piccolo. Who knew this? I never had any idea. And I learned that to be the flute player and to be in the marching band, she had to learn a certain amount of discipline, because the man in charge was harsh and he was firm, and if you didn't do it the right way, you were in trouble. Bethany learned discipline in her life. I think that was part of the growing up in Michigan, part of her journey, and that served her well going forward. Bethany figured out a really important thing about faith in God early on. All the family went to church, but church really connected for Bethany, not as a social world, but that faith in God resonated in her and became a value and became a priority and continued through her life. You've already heard that today, and it's really true. That's the Bethany I knew. Faith was an integral, it was a key part, a key component of who she was. And finally, if you knew her at all, you knew that she loved solitude. Yep, I hate to use the word, but I will. Bethany was actually an introvert. Yeah, she was. And an introvert is one not who can't deal with people and can't do well with people, but is energized by time being alone. And Bethany loved that. Colette shared a story that as a little girl, at night, she disappeared, and everybody said, "Where did Bethany go?" Bethany went wandering out of the house, out to the pond on the property where she could be alone, where she could look at nature, where she could ponder the deep and mysterious things of God, where she was really filling her soul. And that was the Bethany I knew. She was great with people. She was phenomenal with people, but she loved that quiet time of being alone. That's when things processed for her. That's when she asked questions in her mind. And it was a great thing for her to have that time. After high school, I learned that back in 1972, when we graduated, girls in Michigan kind of got steered in one of two ways. You went on to become a teacher, or you went on to become a nurse. And for Bethany, that was an easy choice. She was a nurse through and through. It was in her heart from the beginning, I think, to care for people. And so that choice was easily made, and she went on and had a great career in nursing. I can't tell you about her life at Memorial Hospital. I really can't. And those of you who are here from Memorial, I hope in the next time that we have, you'll share those stories. But I know that she went on and became a nurse practitioner. She worked in trauma and she worked in the ER, and she had a great reputation among people who worked there. People really liked working with her. She worked hard, she was very competent at what she did, and she hated to be corrected. I did learn that one thing. Astoundingly, Bill had to get after her one time before they got married, and she sort of wilted, but she was able to rise up and marry him anyway. So that was a pretty good thing. I met Bethany in 1986. As I mentioned, we both showed up at this big church in Long Beach at the same time. I was looking for community, and I think Bethany was looking to reconcile and kind of reconfigure with God. That God that she had known as a girl back in Michigan, she wanted to be reconnected with him when she was out in California. And Bethany Church turned out to be a fantastic experience for both of us. I watched Bethany grow. I watched Bethany meet people's needs. I watched guys in that singles group fall left and right in love with her. I became a counselor at the church later on, and they would come into my office and say, I met this girl. She really listens. She really seems like she cares about me. And her name's Bethany, right? Yeah. Honestly, I could tell you, 6 guys who came in pledging their troth to her going, wow, I've never met anybody quite like her. And fortunately, she was able to navigate through all of that and hang on until Bill came along, who turned out to be the right guy and brought the right qualities so that she could marry him and have a great life, and the great life they had together. I think also at church, Bethany figured out a really important thing. As a follower of Jesus and as one who really wanted to love God, she understood that she needed to love what God loved. And God loved people. So Bethany was always invested in people, but I think in that time she understood, I need to love people like God would, because that's the highest calling that I could have. And she did that so well. She was a master of caring for people and meeting their needs. Well, the journey continued, and she met Bill. We weren't quite sure, those of us who were with her in the church years in Long Beach, who he was going to be or how that was going to work out. We referred to him as Dr. Bill because there was another Bill in our youth group that was Bill already. So it became Bethany and Dr. Bill. Dr. Bill this, Dr. Bill that. And finally, after they got married, he just became Bill. It became Bethany and Bill. And my wife Carol and I got to be very good friends with them, and we're privileged to get to go on a number of trips and adventures, all kinds of things. The picture over here was one of our finest trips. It was to northern Arizona, to a place called The Wave. And Bethany loved that trip. She was enthralled with the beauty. She was enthralled with the silence and the solitude. And she was enthralled because we had a photographer with us named John Weller, who showed us how to take pictures of this amazing place. And it is a memory that I cherish to this day and always will, of watching Bethany with her tripod and her camera, following John going, oh, that's how you do it. Oh, this is how you take the picture. And she got some great shots from that trip. We got it in our minds that it would be fun to figure out the great migrations of animals in the world. And I teach a class on that subject. And I don't know anybody I could have recruited other than Bill and Bethany to think that would actually be fun. And so together we traipsed around and we decided we'd try and see what we could see. We went to San Antonio, Texas in the middle of summer in order to see the 200 or the 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats come out of Bracken Cave. You had to be there to understand just how cool that was. And Bethany and Bill could understand it and grasp it and say, that was pretty fun. We went to Nebraska, to the Platte River, to watch the sandhill crane migration. We went to Alaska and flew in to watch grizzly bears and saw a sow and her 3 cubs frolic in a meadow for 20 minutes. We watched butterflies in Pacific Grove. Bill and Bethany went to Galapagos to watch blue-footed boobies, and I'm running out of B words, but the other big one was we went down to Mexico to see the baleen, the gray whales down there, which is another treasured memory. I couldn't go on the trip, but my wife was there, and the whales down there are so interesting because they will come to your boat. The females will push their calves up to your boat because they want interaction with people. And so the guide on the boat said, okay, put your hands in the water, and Bethany was the first one to get her hands in the water. And he said, okay, splash a little bit, and so she splashed, and sure enough, Mom and the baby came over to the boat. And though I wasn't there, I can clearly see her cooing and oohing and talking to this 40-ton gray whale and stroking it gently on its black skin and just thinking that she was having the time of her life. Because that was Bethany. She loved to interact with nature, she loved to interact with animals, and she was so tender and so very, very good at it. I don't know, other than John Muir, 2 people who probably explored more of Yosemite than the 2 of you have over the years. You have been there so many times and touched so many parts of that park, and I know how dear that is to you, and it was to her. It's an amazing thing. We were able to travel with Bill and the Koenig family. We did hikes in Yosemite. We did horse trips through the very best of the Sierra in the Ansel Adams Wilderness. We've done a lot, and each time is a new adventure, and each time Bethany was such an asset. I wasn't always sure. In my family, we have a phrase, are you willing or are you wanting to go? I was never always sure whether she was willing or if she was really wanting, but once she got there, I always found Bethany to be enthralled with the beauty of what was there, with the silence and the stillness when she got away, and I think it really nurtured her soul to do those trips and to be in that environment. I'll always, always cherish that. There's two more things that just have to be said about her. She wasn't without moments. One really important moment that I will forever remember was a kayak trip to Santa Cruz Island. We had gone out there to do a kayak trip, Bill, Bethany, Carol, and I, and Santa Cruz is one of the Channel Islands here off the coast, and we had kayaked for the day and come back and set up our camp, and had a fine dinner, and it was time to turn in. And so Carol and I went to our tent, and Bill and Bethany went to their tent, and all of a sudden there was this really aggressive zipper noise, like somebody was really trying to get a zipper open somehow. And then there was this ooh, and then this blood-curdling scream, and the zipper flew open, and I looked out, and here came Bethany, head first, out of that tent as fast as she could go. And I thought, okay, this is farm girl Bethany. She's lived on the farm. There is nothing that she hasn't seen or done. What? It must be a rattlesnake. It must be a massive scorpion, a tarantula, something really bad. Well, what it turned out to be is there was a 2.5-inch Santa Cruz Island field mouse that had gotten into the tent. And it had decided that it would be could never be happier than to spend the night in Bethany's sleeping bag. And farm girl Bethany, who could deal with any trauma in the ER, I mean, she had seen it all, became absolutely unglued by the cutest little furry-eared, long-tailed mouse that you ever saw. It's the only time I ever saw her just lose it, and she really did. And I have teased her about that for a very long time ever since, because Bethany, you're from the farm. Mice had to be everywhere. How could that have been so dramatic? There's two other words I need to use just to describe her life, and you'll agree with these. Bethany knew how to listen. Nobody that I have ever met, when she put her mind to it, listened better than she did. I'm a trained professional counselor. I've been to school, I have a degree, I had a practice. And I would meet her and say, okay, this time, I am not going to be the one to talk. I'm gonna get her to talk to me. And we would sit down, and 20 minutes later, I would shut up and go, she did it again. She knew that. She knew how to flip and turn a conversation back onto you in the gentlest, kindest, most subtle way imaginable, to where you're talking about yourself to somebody who really seems to care, and you realize half an hour later, I know nothing about you, but you know a whole lot more about me. But you're so addicted to this thing that she offered that you just kept on going, and it really was a discipline to try and turn it around and say, and so Bethany, how are you really? And to get her to talk. It was very challenging. She was a master of that, and I saw it over and over again, and she was such an encouragement to so many people because she could do that. It was a gift, it was a blessing, and I've just never seen it quite so clear in any other person as I saw it in her. And secondly, words really mattered to Bethany. But when you talked to her, you didn't get the whole story. She would talk and she would tell you things, but you really understood Bethany when she wrote. It was her written word that said so much. We have a file at home, it's called the Bethany File, and every time we got a birthday card or a note or a letter from Bethany for the last 30 years, after we read it, it went in the Bethany File, because it was too profound and it was too beautiful to throw away. I would look at my wife and go, who does this? Who can turn a phrase like Bethany? And really, I just don't think there are people. She was such a master of being able to do that. So our file is pretty thick right now. We got birthday cards for a long time, and we'd read them, and they'd go in the file. And I went back into that file before today and looked there, and just, again, I marvel at what she was able to put into words that revealed things about herself, but also made the effort to tell you things that she wanted you to know about you. A card from Bethany was not just a, hey, happy birthday. A card from Bethany was something she thought about. A card from Bethany was something that communicated what she wanted you to know that she had thought about and was thinking about you. They were all really, really treasures. I didn't know that entirely until 3 weeks ago. I did, but I really didn't. 3 weeks ago, I learned something about my wife that I had never known before. We had met with her. It's the last time we saw her before she passed away. And she and Carol were talking, and they giggled, and Carol admitted finally, after all these years, an hour before we got married, they were in the bride's room, and my dear wife, who is a fine writer, took all of her vows that she had written for me and gave them to Bethany and said, would you rewrite all of this for me? Because she knew that there's no way that she could be as articulate and beautiful as what Bethany might come up with. And so we got married, and Carol stood there and read this stuff, and I just was amazed. It's like, you wrote, wow, you thought this about me? Wow. I should have known. But here we are, almost 29 years later, and the truth has finally come out, so it's probably a good thing. She was a master. She was just great at being able to turn a phrase and tell you in words where she was coming from, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Share one other quick story. My mom died 5 years ago, and Bethany came to the service that we had, and then came to our after service where my family was all gathered together. And we had about 25 people, and my family is an interesting group. They're very diverse in a lot of ways, and Bethany had never met any of them. But over the next 2 hours at my house, we had a meal, and I watched Bethany flitter. It was kind of like she was a butterfly, and she just flittered from person to person. And I watched as my introvert friend, who is not by nature all that outgoing, worked the room. And it was astounding. It was absolutely astounding what she was able to do. She would have a little meaningful conversation and get to know somebody, and then move over here and move over there. At the end of the whole time, my sister-in-law, who is a challenging person by any measure, came up to Carol and said, I want Bethany to be my friend. To which Carol immediately responded, no, she is my friend. You may not have her. And such was the treasure that Bethany's life was for us, and will always be. I will miss the birthday calls a lot. I will miss the birthday cards. I will miss talking about Lord of the Rings with her. She loved that movie. I will miss her answering machine. I will miss the message on her phone where she says, hi, this is Bethany, and it sounds so real, and you want to jump in and go, Bethany, and then it's, leave a message. It's like, you got me again. How many times are you going to get me on that? But you're so anxious to talk to her and so ready to tell her what's going on. I'll miss that a lot. One of my very dear friends, when I asked for words, gave me 4 words that I thought really summed up a lot. And he said, Bethany was medicinal to the soul. And I thought, wow, that really sums a lot of things up from a lot of different venues of her life. The last time we were together, it was pretty clear that the end was going to come. It was very awkward to know what to say, what to acknowledge, how to do this. She was lying on the couch in a fair amount of discomfort. We had shared a recent trip and a couple of stories, and there was kind of this, what do we do now? And she looked at Carol and I and kind of made it easy. She said to us, I'll be watching you two from up there. and we were sort of taken back and didn't quite know what to say. But as we left and drove home, we looked at each other and we went, that is so Bethany. That is so Bethany. Even after she is gone from here, she, if she can, is going to watch out for us in the future. I don't know what heaven's like. I can't tell you with any certainty exactly what's going on. It would not surprise me to see Bethany in a corner somewhere with Peter or Paul having this intimate conversation about unseen things, putting pieces together because that's what she loved to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if she's not watching out for all of us, because she loved all of us very, very deeply. And it was absolutely a treasure to know her. I watched the treasure shows on TV, Lost Gold, you know, whatever it might be. I'm here to tell you, the real treasure was with us this whole time. The real treasure is Bethany. And the memories we take are the treasure that she left for us to enjoy, and it's the treasure we need to enjoy and remember going forward. Thank you.
Bruce, that was amazing, and I'm sorry I'm the one going after you. That was amazing. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Justin, and I dislike the step qualifier in front of the word son, so I'll just say that I've been Bethany's son for the last 30 years. So I'm going to have to read this because I can't talk very well. In 1996, I graciously invited myself to live back home with Dad and Bethany after college, and I was going to go to physical therapy school and live there for the next several years. And you know, my first order of business in disrupting their newlywed existence, I think you got married a year before, which didn't even occur to me, but anyway, was to get a dog. Which, as Bruce said, she was an animal lover, and so I don't think it took much convincing as far as Bethany went. And my dad loved animals too, but it was a disruption for sure. But it became inevitable when I found a Bernese Mountain Dog at the local SPCA in Pasadena, which, you know, many of you probably know what a Bernese Mountain Dog is, but they're a rare breed. Back then they were more rare than they are now, so it was like, this is a find, we gotta get this dog. Even though at that time he was kind of mangy. He actually had like no hair on his rump. I don't know if you remember. He was pretty stinky, but he had, you know, big beautiful eyes, and he, you know, had this tail that would just thump as hard as you can imagine, like a hammer, if you even thought of coming close to pet him. So Kobe would become my first-born child, really, you know, the first being that needed me and loved me unconditionally. And Bethany loved him, I think, as much as I did. Over the next several years, he weaved his way into all of our hearts, and I would come home from PT school, and I'd see them lying on the floor together, you know, and Kobe would be laid out next to her. And she, I think, was in heaven then, you know, just having Kobe next to her. And if I could go back there in a heartbeat, I would. Love those moments. When Kobe died in 2003, you know, he had weaved his way into all of our hearts, so we were all hurt, but I don't think I realized then how hurt Bethany was by that. And only recently, we discovered 3 of her poems that she had written about Kobe. And she had sent one of them to us at the time, but I didn't realize she had written more. And they're all beautiful, and I love them. But clearly, I could not get through the sad ones. So I'm going to read a lighter one for you. It's a good glimpse into Bethany's full heart and a reminder of how to live a good life. It's written by Bethany through the eyes of Koenig. Keeping Life Simple by Koenig. Greet enthusiastically each night at the door those you love. In this way they will know how much you love them. They will look forward to coming home and will then always eventually come home. This can be done in a number of ways: tail wagging, wiggling your body, a leg grab. If you're inclined to barking, this is also a nice time. Don't let other dogs or people become a distraction from your loved ones. Stay as close as you can, watch them carefully, and follow them wherever you go. Live in the moment. This means full attention, whether sitting on the porch together or just spending time cooking in the kitchen. Take every opportunity to eat. Take food seriously. She was an amazing cook. And don't be afraid to try new things. Kai, you hear that? Nap every chance you get. I like that one. You never know when a long walk or a long trip is in your future. Especially do this when it can be done next to the person you love. Try to convince them that it's okay for dogs to sleep on the bed. Some of your best naps will happen here. Spend time outdoors. There's a whole world of smells out there. Use what you have been given to express your deep love. A thump of the tail on the floor goes a long way. Sit close and press your body up against theirs, or sit in their lap. This always results in some pets and kisses. Watch every move. Look into their eyes and hold your stare until they see you. When you know they're going to sit next to you, spread out and groan a bit so they can reach every inch of you as they pet and brush you. Tolerate the baths, submitting to them quietly. Use a long face to let them know how you feel. Afterwards, they will feel sorry for you, and you might even get a treat. Be a good dog, because then they will take you with them wherever they go. And in summary, use your imagination, as animals were unable to use words to express our love. However, there are many ways to let your owners know how you feel about them.
Well, as a pastor, I would say it's probably a good time to pass your offering plate and go home. You get to share. And, thanks for sharing that. It's good. My name is Mark Roberts. I'm married to Therese, who was one of Bethany's closest friends. And I met Bethany back in the church days, as Bruce was referring to. And Therese and Bethany actually ended up sharing an apartment back in the day, and that's when I was dating Therese. So I spent some time over there, kind of got to know Bethany, and maybe we'll share some other stories later. Lots of good times, and so in just a few minutes here, I just wanted to add maybe one small aspect of something I think Bethany would probably appreciate me sharing. Colette read a few scriptures about Jesus' invitation, and we heard this song by Chris Rice, "Come to Jesus." And I would agree with Bruce. What really made Bethany was that at some point in her life, she responded to Jesus' invitation in her life, and she trusted his promises about healing and trusting him for healing her brokenness and sin and replacing it with life and peace and joy. And one of the most endearing and things that I think just so many people appreciated about Bethany was just how real she was and how authentic her faith was. It wasn't, she was just farthest thing from a pretentious religious person. That was Bethany. She was just so authentic. And over the years, Therese and I, especially Therese and Bethany, I would overhear their conversations and be part of it once in a while. But they would talk so much about the reality of continuing to respond to Jesus' invitation in things in life, to risk and to love and to give and to care and even to suffer. And of course, in the last couple of years, we saw how Bethany lived that authentic life through some really dramatic and difficult suffering, walking through the valley of the shadow. And finally, Jesus' invitation to Bethany was to come home. And with that in mind, I have kind of a picture. Bruce referred to it a little bit, but I have a picture of perhaps what that final invitation might have been like. And in preface to that, I would just say as humbly as I can, I share Bethany's view of the world, that this isn't all there is. And the Bible is clear that there's a life after physical life, what we refer to as heaven. But I had this dream. I remember years ago I had a conversation with Bethany about dreams, and she was talking to me about what could be the significance of them. And it was a little humorous to me because most of my dreams are usually unpleasant. I end up at a funeral and forget to put on my pants or something, you know, or it's just this convoluted bunch of incomprehensible or stressful things. But once in a while, I would have a good dream. And a couple of weeks ago, I had this dream, and I just wanted to share a little bit about it because I think it has maybe some significance about Jesus' final invitation to Bethany. And I ended up in this little community, and I was walking to this house, and it was Christmas time, and it might have been Michigan. It was cold as the dickens, and I get up to this beautiful house, and there's lights decorating it, and there's things decorating the yards, and you can see the reflection of these lights off of the snow, just kind of like millions of diamonds out in the snow. It was really cold, and I don't know if you're familiar with Currier and Ives, but they have these Christmas cards that they have with these beautiful pictures. It was sort of like that, and I'm carrying this dish to the front door. So, you know, if you're from the Midwest, you have to bring a dish to whatever party you come to, you know. And so I was carrying one of these, and I got up to the door, and this grandmotherly-looking lady opened the door and greeted me warmly. And this room was it's a big living room, and it was just full of people. And everybody knew me, and they even liked me, you know. And there was like greeting me and patting me on the back and offering me something to drink and take my coat. And I put down my hot dish, and the host gave me this enthusiastic hug and started asking me how my trip was, and she was worried that I wasn't going to be there on time, and don't I just look great, and her face is just beaming with love, and it was just like, wow, what a great dream, you know? And as I pondered that, and I don't share this to kind of make up some pie in the sky sort of thing. Like Bruce, I don't know exactly what it's like to make the transition. But the Bible does give us some clues about it. And, you know, one thing I think a clue is that God made this world beautiful for us. You know, he made it so we could enjoy it. He gave us senses to take it in. And it's so amazing and so marvelous. And he created Yosemite for us, you know. And for me, he created Texas, you know. Sorry, Bill, you know. But let me read something that Jesus said about this next world that he's creating for us. He said in John 14, he says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house are many mansions, and if it weren't so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." And he alludes to this in a number of places in the Gospels. He talks to his friends, Mary and Martha. Their brother Lazarus had just died. And of course, they were grieving, and Jesus grieved with them. But he made this statement. He said, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will never die, and he will have life that goes on past the physical realm." And I think Bethany not only believed this, but I believe she's experienced it now. Her life reflected a deep and abiding belief in truths that transcend this world. And she knew about this Jesus who the Bible says walks with us. He feels pain. He wept. He carries our sorrows He walks with us through the valley of shadow of death. And yet Jesus overcame it. And he overcame it for us, in our behalf. And when I think about what he said, I'm the resurrection and the life, that means Jesus has the power over life and death. And Jesus said that death isn't final, and neither is disease, and neither is cancer. There isn't anything in this world that can separate us from the love of God that's expressed in Jesus Christ. Death doesn't have the last word, Jesus does. And I have confidence that this good shepherd, he leads us when we put our trust into him, into an existence that can be known, and others can know it. And we will arrive in a place like that where not only do others know us and Jesus knows us, but we're in a community of people who know us and love us and accept us. And it will be like a party. It'll be a gathering where there's joy and former things are no more. And the host will know your name, and your name will be spelled right at the dinner table with a little name tag there. And everything that is good and true and beautiful will be there for us. And here's what I think is most important. The end of the book, if you read the Bible much, Revelation 21 says this. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, or crying, or pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." They'll be gone. And I have confidence that that's where Bethany is right now. She has no more tears or pain or grief or loss. Her hope has been fully realized. And I'm looking forward to the day when I'm reunited with Bethany in that place and with God. And I hope you are too, because Jesus invites us all to come to that place, to our real home, to our eternal home.